Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. This is the script for remotely conducted open meetings. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in discussion. The town reserved the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who does not use a full name or acts inappropriately. Confirming member access. As a preliminary matter, this is the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. I am the chairman, Andrew Lowell. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Franzuto.
Aye.
Mr. Sidlowski.
Aye.
Mr. Bossy.
Present.
Has Ginger made it in yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. We have Thais Fournier here.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Brace?
Nobody else yet.
Okay, thank you. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Hosier? You intend to speak? Thank you. And Ms. Russell? Do you hear us, Elaine Russell?
I'm here.
All right. Introduction to the remote meeting. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Meeting business and ground rules. We are now going to turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, September 7th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So
Moved by Tom Sidlowski, seconded by David Bossy. All in favor, Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Approval of minutes. Did we have some minutes?
Yeah, well, I haven't had time. I've been too busy with my business, so it'll have to wait till the next meeting.
All right.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Peter. We'll look forward to that at our next meeting. Nothing under the chairman's report at this time. Do we have representation from Marine Department?
I believe that's Thais.
Thais?
Yes, I actually don't have any updates per Tara. I have updates for water quality if people have specific questions. I'm here just kind of just to listen and to answer any questions. But I am in contact with Tara, so she is sending me a list of stuff as we speak.
Okay, thank you, Thais. My first on the agenda would be Marine Department report. Thais is with Natural Resources. Do we have any representation from Marine Department, Peter?
We do not.
Thank you. Thais, do you need some time?
Yes, if you'd be so kind, thank you.
That's fine.
Mr. Chairman, we'll have need of her at the, under health of the harbors,
Oh, yes.
the
Yep.
third item.
All right.
So whenever we get to that.
I'll move right on.
Hello there.
Hey, Ginger.
Hi, Peter.
Ginger, hello. Thank you for joining
Hello,
us.
Andy. Yes, finally got in.
Okay, thanks. All right, under old business, proposed amendments to boat Airbnb and liveaboard regulations and slip lottery stakeholders. Discussion and preparation for an October 6th, 2021 select board meeting. This was supposed to be heard at a public hearing at the last select board meeting, and it was continued so that some stakeholders can attend. I'm not sure who those stakeholders are, whether they are simply for the slip lottery and or the Airbnb liveaboard regulations. So I thought it would be best if we, prepare ourselves to attend the meeting. And if there's anything anybody has to add, Mr. Sidlowski.
Bear with me, this may take a few minutes.
That's all right.
So since this has been going on for months and different things have happened, I want to first state that the select board has not been taking up the liveaboard issues since the first meeting about 2 months ago. They've dropped from the packet, and they dropped from the modifications, and nothing is apparently being talked about on the liveaboard regulations. The regulations, if you haven't gotten them, are part of the select board package from August 18th. And you go on the select board, look at the package, and scroll down and see the regulations. But if you don't mind, I'm going to go quickly through what is happening with them. So for the board members who didn't, unless you don't want me to, but the board members who didn't get a chance to look at these, let me tell you, I can tell you what has changed and what they're proposing. Would you like me to go ahead with that?
Tom, please bring us up to speed. Yes, I do.
Okay. So the first thing possibly related to our discussions on gray water, the terms sewage and refuse have been changed to waste. But the prohibition on refuse and that is the same. So for some reason, I think with Matt Fee's problem, they've made just a language change there, and that's in the document. The second thing is dinghy permits. There's been a definition of a dinghy permit added. The requirement to remove dinghies from October 15th to April 15th has been changed from town property to places, quote, where dinghy storage has been permitted. And the town's right to remove dinghies has been extended to these properties. So the town is now writing in that they can go on private property and land bank property and remove dinghies that are improperly stored. In the past, it was only town property that they could deal with. Mooring permits will only be issued to Massachusetts registered vehicles, and that's a change. And I don't know how many moorings are out there for non-Massachusetts registered boats, but that's another change. The dinghy issue seems to be a response to the Berkeley Avenue residents. We've talked about this in the past because there's some issue. The land bank, their racks are full, but they're not overfilled. There's a whole section on dinghy permits. The first section mentions that a dinghy permit is required, quote, in waterfront areas where the harbor master has constructed racks or designated an area for the storage of dinghies. I don't like that because I don't think it's very clear. Does that include the land bank's property? Does that include Berkeley? It doesn't talk about town property, it just talks about sort of they designated areas for dinghies. So I think it's a little bit unclear. There's going to be a $25 fee for a mooring permit. And there's also other provision just to make sure the dinghies are properly stored, i.e. if there's not enough space, you can't put your dinghy, if there's not enough space on the rack, you can't leave your dinghy there. So I don't think that's really controversial. I think it's, you know, the Monomoy guys, both the Cathcart and Berkeley are all upset about dinghies, but the land bank has said, get out of our hair. We're going to let people be there. We'll deal with it. And so this is really seems to be just a Berkeley Avenue solution to the fact that people are putting more dinghies and kayaks on private property. So let me go to the slip provisions. So first change was the size has been changed or has been designated for a recreational slip at 30 feet or smaller. And it has to either be registered or, for the technical guys, hailing in Massachusetts. There will be 35 A slips and 35 B slips. A slips are going to be awarded by a lottery. So they made it clear that they're going to have a lottery to start issuing the A slips, which was something they weren't going to do before. They were just trying to renew them. And they're going to be renewed each year. And then category B will be in the annual lottery. So they have put in there that half the slips are going to, not exclusive of handicap slips, half the slips are going to be automatically renewable. The other half are going to be annual lottery. There's no reference to giving up the mooring. And I have to wonder about that, because what makes me worry about this, there's a large difference in cost between a slip and a mooring. The minimum slip seems to be about $1,760 a year, and a mooring can go for $80 to $100. And what if a Class A slip holder has a financial setback? All of a sudden, not only can't they pay for their slip, they can't put their boat in the water because they've lost their slip. So there is some question about these 35 people, but we can discuss that after I finish all of this. Keep that in mind, though, because that had been discussed and it's not in the proposal. Commercial, they're going to do a lottery with automatic renewals. Any available slips on the commercial side will be lotteried. Also, they're going to have 2 renewable handicap slips. So 2 handicap slips are going to be lotteried, and then they'll be renewable forever like a Class A slip. Now, what they're going to do on the Class A slips is they're going to create a wait list of 20 drawn in the first lottery. So they're not going to lottery off available Class A slips for recreational. They're going to have a wait list, which they're going to create day one. They're going to advertise the lottery at least 2 weeks in advance, and it's going to be in October. And they have finally put in that only 1 entry can be permitted per vessel. So apparently they'd let that get out of hand, and it was I think it was 1 entry per person or something. And Charlie had said that you know, some families had 5 or 6 people entering the lottery, but it was clear they didn't have 5 or 6 boats. So it's going to be 1 boat, 1 entry, a Massachusetts registered boat, or I guess whatever. You can explain to me when it's not registered if it's a hailing boat, but it's got to be a Massachusetts boat. So that's what's there, just as a reminder. And I open it up for discussion.
Well, so the Airbnb part, Tom, is just dropped out, not part of,
There is nothing in there about liveaboards. Liveaboards, as I said at the beginning, liveaboards are gone. They're not in the modifications. They're not in the, they're not in the changes that I saw.
interesting. Wow.
And they weren't in the changes, you know, they seemed to be, the first day they sort of went through, no one said anything. And unless I'm missing it, I haven't seen a liveaboard thing show up in the package.
I was under the impression when it was first spoken about that they didn't have time and didn't get to the liveaboard portion. And then when it was brought up at a future meeting, it was only to be, to inform us that it was being continued for stakeholder attendance.
My recollection was that in the first meeting, there were no comments about the liveaboard regulations by anybody. Nobody had any objections. They were just like, okay.
But
But they're not in the document. I don't see any.
There's
I don't see
nothing in a packet.
I didn't see it in the packet. I don't. Dave, did you see it in the packet?
Mr. Franzuto or Mr. Bossi?
Franzuta.
No, it's not, but I don't remember in all the stuff that I watched and read, I also don't see that they adopted that portion either.
No, I don't recall they adopted it either.
So it needs to be adopted, and for it to get adopted, it's gonna have to come back presumably at the October 6th meeting.
So maybe Andy, you can talk to Sheila and ask her, I could be wrong, but you can ask her if it's anywhere in the submission, and are they gonna post it for the public hearing?
Okay, all right. I was under the impression that they were sticking with all liveaboards have to be licensed captains, or what was the other description they had? But this is interesting because I was just under the impression that it just hadn't been gotten to yet in the agenda. I feel as though, our advisements, we're an advisory board to the select board, and we brought this advisement to Sheila instead of the select board. And I feel like because of that, this is able to happen without our voice and concerns over almost a year and a half of discussion on this, and it being also initiated by Sheila, not us. She initiated that she had an issue with Airbnbs. So certainly I'll get in touch with Sheila as soon as I can and see where this stands. Mr. Franzuto.
I'll also follow up with Erica Mooney and try to puzzle out what happened to that section of the regulations and the packet. And I'll get back. I do want to talk about the thing that Tom brought up about the person who got a slip in perpetuity giving up their mooring. I'd like to talk about that when you have a minute.
Well, you've got the floor, Mr. Franzuto.
Well, I feel that I understand what Tom's saying about the financial situation, and glibly, if you're having a financial situation that's going to prohibit you from paying your slip fee, then your financial situation may be to the point where you're not going to be using your boat anyway. But I don't know that, and every case is different. But I still feel strongly that if you got a slip in perpetuity, you should give up your mooring. Now, yeah, you got to also remember, we're only talking 35 moorings here, and out of those 35, there are probably not that many folks who have a slip have a mooring anyway. So it's not gonna be some great windfall to the mooring waiting list to, attempt to clear that off. But it's probably still a few moorings. And I just want to know how the rest of the board feels about that.
Board members? Now, all right, then, as far as Mr. Bossy, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I originally thought it made a lot of sense for people to, if you get the gift of one of these 35 slips, that you give up your mooring. Just to give other people the opportunity. Still 35 people that more boats that people can use the harbor and enjoy it.
That's right.
Yeah,
One other
Mr. Chairman?
I saw Tom's hand first. Hang on, Ginger, hold that thought, Mr. Sudowski.
No problem.
One other thought, this recent hurricane that didn't hit us, Sheila emptied out because I took a boat ride with J-Star, and Sheila emptied out the dock. And he went and moored his boat in Pacamo, and it didn't hit much. But then I saw the bill I got to take my boat out and put it back in. And I wasn't on the island, so I didn't know what was happening. But if someone wanted to ride that storm out, wouldn't have a place to put their boat unless they decided to pick up on somebody's mooring who removed their boat. They could probably do that. So there is a situation where, just like we were talking before about where the Nantucket Moorings guys, where Raynamo's stuff, sometimes his insurance makes people pull their boats off the mooring earlier than other people might. You do have a situation where if you've got a slip and Sheila tells you to go, and you don't have a mooring to put it on, you got nowhere to go but to pull it. And it's just a thought. So I haven't made up my mind how I feel, but I want to throw that out.
Just a second, Dave. Ginger?
Oh, I was just going to say that it seemed logical to me that you would give up your mooring if you had a permanent slip.
All right, thanks, Ginger. Mr. Franzuto?
Yeah, the other thing, like Dave Bossy said, that's 35 folks that would be able to use their boats on a regular basis that wouldn't be. And the other thing, Tom, to your point, and it's a good point, I understand, but it costs me $500 plus a year to maintain my mooring. And if I'm going to have a slip and I'm going to pay $2,000 for a slip and then $500 on top of that for a mooring, in the case that I might have to put my boat on that mooring because of a storm, the price of poker is going up pretty steep there.
Well, my mooring permit's only $100
to maintain.
Well, no, the permit itself is only $100.
Right. But I'm
up to
talking
23 feet.
Right. I'm talking about the chain and the mushroom and the
Yeah.
ball and putting it in, taking it out. And so by the time you do all that, plus you pay the permit, it's a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
And the guy that does my mooring worked for me since he was 13 and still charges me a pretty penny. Neither here nor there. But my point is that I just think that we should afford 35 more people the opportunity to get out there and enjoy the harbor. And that's
I don't feel that strongly about it. As a devil's advocate, and if I'm the person who happens to be the one to go to the meeting, I'll represent whatever the board wants, whatever the majority is. So I just put that out there so that we thought about it, so we've considered it. But I'm happy to have people get rid of their mooring if they get a permanent slip. I don't mind.
That's why I wanted it discussed, because if I go to the meeting, I want to represent what the board wants to do too. And if the board votes that they should give up the mooring, then, that would be a stronger message and something that you, Tom, or I, or whoever goes to the meeting can stand up and represent with a clear clear conscience and a clear voice.
All right.
I mean, we've come a long way from talking this through a year and a half ago. So
Well, what about the numbers? There's Mr. Franzuto, how many moorings are we allowed in the harbor and how many are being used? I was under the impression that there's 100, if not 200 moorings that are allowed. Maybe they're not in the water, but we're permitted for how many and how many are actually out there and in use?
all right, there's 1,800 permitted moorings. And then there are a certain number above that are waterfront property moorings, which is a plan that I came up with years ago, that if someone owned deeded waterfront rights, they were allowed to have a mooring permit for that property, because they were going to have a mooring in front of their house anyway. So we didn't include those in the 1,800. And I don't know what the number is of those. When I was doing it, it was somewhere around 300. So you're up to about 2,100 moorings in the harbor. That's not counting rental moorings. That's just private use moorings.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not, barking up a tree that's not necessary to bark up. If these 35 moorings are not let go by 35 slip holders, so to speak, we're just throwing that out there kind of ambiguously, but is it really opening it up for others, or is there space available for others?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't know how many of those 35 folks have a mooring permit to relinquish. And I'll bet it. I certainly believe it's not all of them. So I don't think this is a big number that we're talking about.
Yeah, and it kind of connects with what I believe Tom was just saying about the storm that never came. I actually had several fishermen approach me about the evacuation of the harbor, evacuation of the town pier. I heard that Pulpus Harbor became quite full, and really the fishermen's concerns were, is not our harbor a harbor of refuge?
No, it's not.
Okay, all right.
It's not a harbor of refuge. It's a safe harbor for boats that are in distress, but it's not a harbor of refuge. It's never been designated as one. And as far as Pulpus is concerned, what happens is a lot of the commercial boats and a lot of the people in the know, pull their mooring and take it up to Pulpus and tuck it up in there and hide from the storm. It's been going on forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of nobody. I mean, guys like Jay Starr and I mean, I use him as an example, but the Whole Gates and those guys, that's where they go to hide out. They'll either put a big mooring up there, or they'll go up there and anchor and they'll ride it out. But that's been going on forever.
Mr. Brace?
Yeah, that was my question. And you say they go up there to hide out, Dave. They do go up there and anchor, but we're not allowing overnight anchoring anymore, right?
There's an area that we don't allow overnight anchoring, but I don't believe Pulpus Harbor is exempt from that. But there again, what are you going to do? You're going to tell those guys with those 35 Duffies and those big 40-foot boats that they got to haul them,
right?
Or run them to the Cape?
No,
I'd much rather them go up in. I mean, it's just kind of a better arrangement. I mean,
it should be all hand. I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Mr. Brace, please.
It should be all hands on deck. When it's a storm, there should be some latitude for everybody. And if people can't pull boats, then there should be places that boats could go just for the storm.
Most.
because we're trying to accommodate everybody. We can't just, like, I agree with Dave 100%. You can't just
Most.
crush them down with the law, then say, oh, too bad, 150-mile-an-hour winds and whatever. There should be space up in both lobes of Pulpus Harbor. You should be able to maybe put your boat up, if it's a nor'easter or whatever, then you should maybe put it up in the lee of the Cascada Woods. You should,
Most definitely.
all of that should be,
You gotta,
it shouldn't even be thought about. It should be,
no,
yeah.
I totally agree. And you gotta also remember, these are not, no offense to anybody's capability, but these are not your Saturday, Sunday bluebird sailors. We're talking about Nantucket guys with substantial means and substantial equipment and substantial knowledge and seamanship that are doing this. And if we can't, like you've heard me say this before, if we can't help those guys, who the hell are we going to help?
Mr. Sidlowski.
So if I can take this discussion to the point where we started on the question of whether or not a Class A slip holder who has a permanent slip has to give up their mooring, I would like to make a motion that this board vote that we state to the select board that we would like them to consider adding to this proposal that a person with a permanent recreational mooring has to give up their recreational slip has to give up their mooring.
I second that.
Okay, motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a second, Ginger. The motion's been made by Mr. Sidlowski, seconded by Mr. Franzuto, to write a letter and inform an advisement that we would, anybody receiving one of the 35 slips in the slip lottery, if they happen to have a mooring permit, they need to render it. Discussion on the motion.
Discussion on-
Ginger.
Yes, I think we just need to be clear that they're people with a permanent slip, not a year-to-year lottery, if that's still contemplated.
Mr. Sidlowski, that's what you meant?
Yes, the
Yeah.
Class A permanent renewable slips.
Okay. Mr. Brace, you've got that down. Other board members? Comments on the motion? Not seeing or hearing any. I'll take a vote on the motion. All in favor? Mr. Sidlowski,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
chair votes aye to make it unanimous. Any other discussion on this matter before I turn? I'm going to allow public comment on this
Just to clarify,
while we're in this.
Mr. Chairman, it's tomorrow night, right? When this comes up, when.
No,
is that
no.
correct?
This comes up October 6th. Tomorrow night is our next item on the agenda, Mr. Lambrecht's oyster lease.
Oh, right, okay.
So while we're hot on the subject, I think it's only fair to ask for any public comment. Is there any from the Russells? Is Elaine Russell still on board, or Tim?
Andy, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. I've just been listening for informational purposes, so, but I thank you for addressing this issue. And I'll probably see someone at the meeting next month.
Okay, thank you, Elaine, for following along and being concerned. We appreciate your and your husband Tim's wisdom here at the board. Board members, any more discussion on this? I'd just like to I guess first I've got to get in touch with Sheila. I guess we have another meeting before this comes up. I was in touch with Erica Mooney on this. Namely, I wanted to know more of a description of who the stakeholders are that wanted to be involved in the meeting, specifically if they had any issues on Airbnb. She said she'd get back to me. She did get back to me and simply say that Select Board member Don Holgate was going to be organizing a meeting with stakeholders. And I let Erica know that we have had this on our agenda for 18 months. And we've had lengthy discussion on it, and that we brought our suggestions to Sheila. And this is where I feel, possibly we've lost some water to tread on, but maybe there's still time to play some catch up here. And on behalf of the board, I mentioned to Erica that we as a board, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, are stakeholders in this as well. And please inform Ms. Holgate that we would like to be involved in the stakeholder meeting in one way, shape, or form. So she said she would do that. And I have not heard back. So don't know if there's been a stakeholder meeting. Who said, Mr. Franzuto, you said you were going to get in touch with Erica?
Yes, sir. I had to talk to her about something else. So I'll follow up on this and find out if there's any schedule for a stakeholders meeting. I believe, since we're in a discussion about this, I believe that Tom's presence there, bringing up the discussion about our recommendations about continuing to have a lottery for 35, a certain number of slips, which then shook out to be 35. I think that and the discussion that the Board of Selectmen had amongst themselves, I think that Mr. Gibson saw the writing on the wall and came back with this new proposal because he could see the board had a taste for continuing the lottery. Because as we discussed, we believe that that's a fair way to do it. So I think I think we have been included, maybe not to the degree that we should have been, but I think because of Tom's presence and his comments that night, it got the board thinking and at least headed in this right direction.
Oh, and I agree 100%. On behalf of the board, I thank Tom for doing that and being there. Tom, you are so well versed and well rehearsed with what is going on with this. I could never duplicate that and bring myself up to speed as you are with this. So I'm hoping, Mr. Sidlowski, that you will mark your calendar for that October 6th meeting. And somebody needs to keep an eye on the select board's agenda for that meeting and see to it that it doesn't jump around, get moved by any means. Clarify for sure now that it is October 6th. I believe, Mr. Brace, you just did that last week, clarifying
Yes.
that.
Yep.
All right. Let's just simply stay on top of it. And Mr. Sidlowski, if you're able to speak on the board's behalf, as you have already done, that would keep consistency and a strong voice for sure. So I appreciate that. If you cannot do that, Mr. Sidlowski, please let us know so that so that another board member can prepare themselves as you have yourself.
Unless something changes, I'll make it.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendments, Airbnb liveaboards or slip lottery? Not seeing any, we will move forward to the oyster lease permit revocation discussion and preparation for the September 8th, which is tomorrow, 2021 Select Board. Review of Ted Lambrecht's recommended oyster lease revocation. Now, this is my feelings are, this is in the select board's hands, of course. And a lot of it's gonna have to do with what his progress is and what Mr. Carlson will be representing there. If any board members have anything to add to this, want to review, discuss, please make it known now. Mr. Brace.
Well, I'd just love to know how much progress is he, before the meeting, it'd be good to know how much progress has been made. Does anybody have any information? Has anybody heard anything? Has anybody seen him out there?
Well, let's go straight to Thais and see if she has anything.
I wish I did, but I can actually, if you'd like, I can email Jeff and or JC for more information and send an email update out to you after the meeting, if that would be helpful. I'm not sure if they have more information. I'm hoping they do.
Thank you, Thais. I have to agree with Mr. Brace. It certainly would be nice to be up to speed on that. But you know, we trust Mr. Carlson's you know, keeping track of Mr. Lambrecht's progress, and I'd like to think that you know, we'll certainly be in support of what Mr. Carlson has to say to the select board. Is anybody available to attend that? I may be traveling at that time of that meeting, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to attend.
I can go.
You sure?
Yeah, someone's got-
Well, Mr. Sidlowski, really, you know, the board probably does not know how we voted. I think back to how we voted on this, and Mr. Sidlowski was the only dissenter, but it's not the normal description of dissension that one would think, and which I appreciated very much. We were all very lenient with Mr. Lambrecht, and Mr. Sidlowski's thoughts were to be, you know, a little stricter with Mr. Lambrecht, and rightfully so. I can understand that, and I think if there were reason for somebody from our board to speak on this, it would be that we reviewed this. This was on our agenda for a lengthy amount of time, and if it's not stated that, you know, there are people in a waiting list for this acreage, that would be more active. I'm sure that will probably be part of Mr. Carlson's discussion if necessary, but it would be nice if a couple of points like that were kept in mind just in case.
If
Mr. Brace.
Can someone on the board remind me the dates that we hung in there with him? I mean, from when to when did we hear from him and then sort of coach him along, and just so that if I get up and speak, I can say, you know, we were there for him for this period of time, we monitor, whatever, just if I.
What did, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Franzuto.
Peter, didn't you write a letter? Didn't you write a letter to the Board of Selectmen about this?
We did, we did, and that's, I was just considering that maybe that should be sent out to the board email, a little reminder, or at least to Dawn or somebody. Dawn's not the head of it now, I forget who. But I'm sorry?
Jason Bridges is chairman now.
But you might be able to recap enough information from that letter, Peter.
From that letter. Right. Because I believe it was the fall of 29, it was right before COVID, and then we went through all that winter.
Right, right.
Yeah. So, but I think Dave's right. I think that letter will recap it.
Okay, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Andrews, please.
Oh, yes. I think that if you just look at our agendas, you can see when it first appeared. on our agenda, and that was when we essentially started, even if we hadn't voted at that point or written the letter. And the other point I think that speaks to our issues is that oysters are valuable for improving water quality, and to have this acreage unused is it's not maximizing the effort that we would like to make to have the harbor waters cleaner.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm recalling now. Late 2019, and then we had COVID, and then we resumed our meetings, I think in June, in maybe the last meeting of May, and so we coached him.
Year and a half.
We had coached him all of 2020 from like June all the way until, springtime of 2021. So
Correct.
I'm back at November 17th, 2020, and it's on the agenda. November 3rd, 2020, it's on the agenda. Boy, then I'm back in July.
It was pre-COVID. It was
Yeah,
it was a long time. I think he's got the chronology down.
all right. Well,
because then in the spring of this year, that's when we made our recommendations that, that we.
Right, that's when we sent the letter. It's the spring of this year. Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go back and read my letter.
I don't know if this is appropriate or not. Stop me if it is not, Mr. Brace, but the letter that we, and the recommendations that we gave to Sheila and never gave to the select board in respect to the last item on our agenda, the Airbnbs specifically, I'm just wondering if that could be sent to them as well, or would we need to back up and take a vote on that?
I might
Well,
see,
since we've already sent it to Sheila, it doesn't appear to be going anywhere. We already took a vote that the letter our recommendations should go to Sheila. They went to Sheila. She thanked us. They're in the public domain. I don't think we need to take a vote. If we want to take a vote, we can.
Dave, what did you have to say?
thanks. I'm just concerned, it was acted on. There wasn't official action taken. Sheila did submit it to the select board. It was in their packet originally. And I think it might be best just to see if this was an oversight and it got dropped out of the packet. Or if Sheila says, no, that got quashed. And if that happened, that's a different situation. But if Sheila said, what do you mean it's not in the packet? Well, then it's an oversight on the select board. It got accidentally dropped. So I think we should start by asking Sheila, do you know this got dropped, that it's not being considered anymore? And if she said, yes, I knew that, then that's an issue we should all discuss.
All right.
Said, no, I didn't realize that. I thought everything, assumed it was in there.
I think
That might be a way to go, is to ask her first.
I think you ask Erica first.
All right.
Or Erica. Yeah.
We have time on this, so I'll let it go for now. I just feel like the select board has not been informed or does not realize how much time we spent on it. And I would hope that it would be taken into more consideration if they realize that. And what makes me say this is not to get off subject. I'll make it as quick as I can. But when Mr. Bender recently went to Mr. Fee about boat basin pumping, and Mr. Fee brought it up at a select board meeting, the rest of the board said, if this were an issue, shouldn't we be hearing it from Shab? If they expect to hear from us, that was good to hear, that they would want to hear it from us. And to me, this is, they didn't hear this directly from us. We just sent it to Sheila. So, Mr. Franzuto.
Was our letter to Sheila in the Board of Selectmen's packet?
Sheila took what we suggested. She met with Mr. Charlie Gibson, and they made some modifications.
Then I agree with your previous statement. I think they want to hear from us. I think they're not hearing from us because they're not getting our correspondence. And I think that we should send whatever letter that we sent to Sheila, reiterating our many months of discussion, to the Board of Selectmen, so they can see that we have been discussing this for over a year and a half. Very similar to the Lambrecht thing. We've been discussing it for almost 2 years.
Mhm.
They need to know that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Bossy.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I wouldn't send exactly what we sent to Sheila. I would say that portion, I think we sent more than just the Airbnb to Sheila. I thought there were some, but maybe I might be mistaken, but I think we should kind of focus on the Airbnb, and we should say flat out, we didn't think there was a problem. These were our recommendations. These were in the original packet. They've disappeared from the packet for October 6th, and we're concerned because we spent a lot of time on this.
So, Mr. Chairman, what we sent to Sheila was not only the Airbnb recommendations, but also recommendations based off of what Mr. Bossy found from another town on liveaboards, and how we thought that the liveaboards thing should be tighter. And these are the things that we wanted changed, and we changed them on the form and then sent that to Sheila. We sent both those items.
Is that I'm sorry, that's a good point. Is that in there? We talked about Airbnb missing. Is the liveaboard regulations with the insurance and the things like that, is that missing also? I haven't checked it.
They were grouped under, the same heading, Airbnb and liveaboard regulations. So
Right, there were the three sections.
But
Right.
I haven't researched the select board's packet, and so I have to rely on Mr. Sadowski, who's the most informed here with this, and we need to do some research as well and simply find out, has this been dropped or not? Mr. Sadowski has already said that he's not seeing it there, but he may be mistaken and may not be looking in the right place. So
Is Tom still on here?
Yeah, I'm looking at the July meeting, which had liveaboards on the agenda, but I'm not finding the liveaboard regulation changes actually in the document that's in the package. The documents in the package is just an earlier version of what we're looking at now. But liveaboards were stated on the agenda, but it doesn't look like new subject, existing additional provision. Yeah, there was some stuff moved. Yes, there were some liveaboard things there in, Airbnb. There were a few liveaboard things put in a memo. I can't see them. Well, give me a moment. Move to 25-212. Okay, hold on a second. 25. Hold on, this has more.
Thomas, page 163 in the packet has the liveaboards.
163, there's a thing, and then it should be section 250-212. So there should be a 250, but 250 has been changed to 278. So
Right, 278, right, 5D, liveaboards. And it's the same location as the remove the annual requirement, the lottery.
Oh, there's the liveaboards.
Dinghies.
Now, hold on a second. Let me see if the liveaboards are in the same place. It was right after the Dinghy Permit.
Oh, I see. Liveaboards is both B&B and the insurance requirement. Add liveaboard insurance. They have all of those items.
I could have missed it, but I didn't see it as a change. Hold on. Dinghy permits. It's not here anymore. Section D is gone. So the liveaboard section that they put in for the meeting in July was no longer there for the meeting in August.
So we have to ask what happened to it because
Yeah.
that's,
So the question is, what happened to the liveaboard? And if you give me a minute, I could look at the August agenda and see if the word liveaboard was on the agenda for August. That was August 18th, I think. So I look at the agenda for August 18th, it's coming up. And the public hearing. It wasn't the 18th.
19th, the agenda packet. That's a workshop. It's the 18th, select board posting. Yep. The agenda packet. Yeah, there it is.
And I'm looking for the public hearing. I don't see it on the, it was on the, I'm mixed up here. Because all the public hearings are electric stuff. Oh, here it is. Hearing to consider amending chapter 250 harbors and town pier regulations to be known as chapter 278 continued. But they removed the liveaboard regulations on the version from that meeting. At least I don't see them in the one I printed out.
No, I agree with,
Right.
I don't see them either. So I think we're in a position where we should ask them what happened to this proposed section from the July meeting that was dropped.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really the question. What happened to the July meeting? What's that 278-5D, was it?
yeah, section D.
278-5D liveaboards. What happened to that section?
Right, and there was no, it was discussed at the meeting, and there wasn't a single comment.
Right.
Nobody
seemed to-
raised a comment about liveaboards at the meeting.
But a
So the
vote
question
wasn't
is-
taken. No vote
No,
was
it's not.
taken.
What,
No,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Franzuto,
what date was that in July, gentlemen?
14th.
14th,
The what?
July 14th.
July
14th.
14th is when the public hearing was for harbors and waterways.
All right, so Andy, if you're gonna follow up with Sheila, I'm gonna follow up with Erica and bang her on those specific dates and find out what happened to that. See if I can find out what happened to that.
Okay,
Back to that other discussion. I
Okay.
think the letter that Peter's gonna write to add the section about the perpetual slip holders relinquishing their mooring permits if they have one. I think that should definitely go to the Board of Selectmen, but I'm wondering if that's a opportunity for us to also reiterate how we feel about the lottery section, the lottery section.
Mr. Brace. You're muted.
I think I missed something. I don't remember a letter was going to be written by me.
I thought, how are we gonna tell them that we wanted them to?
Tom's planning to attend the meeting and do it in person and with our.
Oh, okay,
We can do it
Okay.
in person. We don't need a letter for that. It just, it
Okay.
came up in discussion. We could say
all
we
right,
do support the notion that those people give up their moorings.
All right.
And that, then they'll say yes or no. we don't need to put Peter to work for this.
All right, but
I mean, I don't mind. I didn't hear Peter go write another letter.
No,
All
I'm
I heard
sorry.
was Tom
I'm
was going to
sorry.
be at the meeting and speak up. So
I'm sorry. I guess I'm frustrated that the correspondence that we're sending is not getting to the selectmen for their consideration and the proof, if you will, that we've been working on both these issues for 18 months each.
well, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but we sent the Airbnb and the liveaboard stuff to Sheila because that's what she wanted, but we didn't send it to the select board. This was our recommendations were to go to Sheila to inform her overall revising her recommendations. So I don't think we intended to send to the town administration. Is that right, you guys?
Well,
That's correct. That's, yeah.
you're
Yes.
probably right. You're probably
Well,
right.
we
I
were
think-
going through, just as a reminder, it was a sensitive time. And I actually remember, Peter, you actually got in touch with Erica to see that that procedure was proper for us because we are an advisory board to the select board. And she actually went to Libby and asked her if it was okay. And then you got the answer back that it was okay to do that. We waited another meeting to actually find out that this was an okay method to do it.
Yeah.
And basically the reason we did it was to not go, I mean, it's all her purview. We knew she was going to take it and adjust it in some way, shape, or form. But the part that bothers me that is lost is that the select board may be making a decision, possibly dropping a section out of this, not realizing how much time we've put into it and how strongly we felt about it and the record of our vote. Mr. Sadowski.
Andy, I'd like to propose that you send an email to Sheila asking that she sends a copy of what they're going to submit on October, for the October 6th meeting, in time for us to review it in 2 weeks. We're having I do not want to review it the day before the select board meeting.
I agree.
We can't do a written response. We can't do anything.
That's why we're
You
talking
should
about
send an
it.
email. We want to see it. We want to see it. And 2 weeks before, we want to see it in 2 weeks. So we could discuss exactly, because last time they changed the whole deal on us and she didn't come back and say, oh, everything I agreed to do, Charlie didn't want, so we didn't do it.
Mhm. Exactly. Thank you, Tom. Mr. Franzuto.
Right. But we're an advisory board to the Board of Selectmen, and I know that was a sensitive time. And I know you don't want to hear history, but I'm going to give you 5 seconds. For 20-some years, the recommendations of SHAB were always discussed with the harbor master, me, and then that went to the selectmen as a unified idea or recommendation. So I think we still need to remember that and it's painful for me to say this, but with or without her and Charlie's approval, our recommendation should stand and go as an advisory to the Board of Selectmen, whether Charlie Gibson or Sheila Lucy agree with it or not.
Well, I agree with you, Dave, and I would add that I think that Charlie Gibson and Sheila Lucy and the rest of it, I think they go around us whenever they get the chance, and I don't think they necessarily include us in things. If anyone can remember the whole mooring rate, you guys weren't all on the board, but the mooring regulations that revised way back when I was in the beginning, the only way that we knew that there was going to be mooring regulation revisions is one of the mooring companies that guy, I can't say his name publicly, but he alerted me and said, "Hey, did you know about this meeting?" And I said, "No." And it was a whole meeting of stakeholders, led by Sheila Lucy and Charlie Gibson, changing the mooring regulations, and they didn't even tell us. And so I called Pittman and said, "What the hell is this? We're the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. We should know about this. We should be it." And so they pulled back. They held another hearing so that we could be there, but they were on the way to making changes without telling us. So, I'd say that we work with Sheila as much as we can, but she doesn't attend a lot of meetings, and we'll always support her. But I don't think we should wait for her to show up at a meeting so that we can then maybe get our word to the select board. I think we should get our word to the select board, and we can CC her, but.
All right, Mr. Franzuto, once more.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Peter's exactly right. And there are going to be times when we don't agree with what they say, just like we did with the slip lottery thing. We're entitled to our votes and our opinion and expertise and our advice to the selectmen. Peter, am I wrong? Is that not the way we did it for 24 years?
Well, Dave, when you were the harbor master, you were both the marine department and you were both the natural resources department. So anything any decisions that Shab made that required the ear of the select board, the board would recommend to you, and then you would go. Then there would be a public hearing, and you'd be before the select board, and the camera would turn to you or whatever, and they'd say, "Okay, Dave, what do you have to say?" And you'd say, "This is what the board recommended." But it was a different thing because it was just you, and your boss was Libby Gibson. It wasn't split.
I agree. I understand. But I just want to say that cooperation and being able, and like I alluded to a little while ago, being able to stand up and say, whoever you are, and say, I represent the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, or I represent their feelings or their votes on this. And they've worked very hard on this for the last 18 months. Being able to say that with a clear voice should carry the day, or should go a long way to helping them make an informed decision. And I'll shut up on this topic. I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Franzuto. Ginger?
Yes, I'd just like to point out, to amplify what Mr. Franzuto has said, that we've been discussing this for a considerable amount of time, and stakeholders have attended our meetings, and that we represent, them as well. So, it's not, we're not just off in left field.
All right, well,
we've listened to some of the concerns of the of those people already.
okay. I'm going to be getting in touch with Sheila. Her current proposal needs to be sent to all board members, so we all have a copy to be able to review it and digest it. And we'll take this from there. If the Airbnb regs have been dropped, and the liveaboard portion as well with the insurance and all the other things that we looked into, what I hand delivered to Sheila, I feel needs to be sent to the select board, so that and it could simply be the same thing that we sent to Sheila. We don't need a vote, I don't believe, to send it to the select board. We already voted to send it out, so it just went to Sheila and not the select board. Just so they're in the know ahead of time that we've spent time on this. But first, let me talk to Sheila, and then I'll get back to Peter on what I've found out, so we know whether we need to send this or not. If it's been dropped, I feel that it should be sent. to the
I
select board.
totally agree.
Okay. Any more discussion? Not seeing or hearing any. Excessive sand and scallops or dredging plan. If there's, Thais, is there any new news on a dredging plan from Mr. Carlson?
No new news as of yet. Remains the same as in last meeting.
Okay. Moving forward to Health of Harbors, excessive, unless there were board members had anything to add on dredging, sorry to back up. Not seeing or hearing any excessive lawn fertilizer use. Anything from the board? Anything new to add to this? We like to keep it on the agendas, hopefully, hoping that something more comes up here.
I agree.
Mr. Franzuto.
Peter, have we heard, or Andy, have we heard back from NIR?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, that's my bad because I haven't sent the letter yet because I thought I needed the board to vote to tell me to do that. So
That's right.
you can reach through the screen and smack me in the face, but I just haven't. I'll send it tomorrow morning, but I just haven't sent it yet.
Okay, all right. I just didn't know if we had heard anything.
No.
Well, would you like a vote?
I would like a vote.
Okay, so the letter that was drafted earlier and actually the board requested Mr. Brace to write the letter to NIR under some advisement from Mr. Pronk about what he had witnessed. Can I harbor a motion from a board member to approve sending the letter to NIR?
So
Mr.
moved.
Chairman, so moved. This is Ginger.
All
Or
right.
I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Sidowski has moved to send the letter. Ms. Andrews has seconded the motion. All in favor, Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
I,
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
chair votes aye. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you.
I just want to say I'm sorry that I just thought that this was a thing that I needed to be told to send a letter. That's all. I mean,
That's quite all right.
it's not all right because
Well-
they could still be spraying. So
Mhm. Better late than never.
It's an ongoing concern.
Oops, Ms. Andrews, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just said that this is
No,
an
no.
ongoing concern. It's not going to go away. So
I didn't
the
get
timing
your,
is,
I didn't get your aye vote on this. I'm so sorry. Did I?
well, I seconded the motion.
Oh,
So
that's
yes,
right.
I
I'm
voted
sorry.
aye.
Yes, correct. Thanks. All right. FDA shellfish taking prohibition in the mooring field. This was something that we've kept on here for Leah Hill. Had something to present to us in the one meeting we had back in person. She was there. We did not form a quorum. Thais, anything on this?
Yeah, we're still working on it. You know, with Leah out on maternity leave, we had sent a number of requests to Sheila in regards to what we discussed earlier, like mooring numbers, because we wanted to get as much information we could to present to the DMF and have a conversation about that, because we're just currently collecting data so that hopefully we can confirm that everything is open. And we actually just recently finished our recreational scallop surveys this past week. And so now in the next month, we're going to be doing all of our dive surveys for eelgrass and habitat and more scallop assessments. So that's the progress that we're at now. We're still waiting on bits of information to come back to us, and then hopefully we can get some confirmation, but hopefully by the next SHAB meeting, we'll have something more concrete.
Okay, well, it's, I mean, the season is just
I know,
winding
around the
down.
corner.
And well, but no, the summer season is just winding down. We can't expect you to have all kinds of numbers or reports for us where it basically just started winding down yesterday. There's still a lot of activity out there. So, of course, we're always curious to know what the habitat is like for the shellfish.
Yeah, that's just an update.
Okay. Water quality testing update, boat holding tank dye tablet distribution. You know, Mr. Brace and I attended the State of the Harbor address held by the Land Council at the Nantucket Yacht Club. And we both learned there from Ms. Lucy's presentation that the Land Council was funding for dye tabs and that Ms. Lucy was going to begin to distribute them. Anything you can share with us on either of these, the water quality testing update and boat holding tank dye tablet distribution?
Sure. I mean, we definitely support the boat holding tank dye tablet. That's been in conversation for some time. I'm not sure if that has been implemented with Miss Lucy this summer yet. Hopefully that will happen or a year to go for next summer. But several of us were also in attendance at the meeting that you spoke of, the State of the Harbor. As for water quality, we are finishing our sampling season for the summer. So we'll end in probably at the end of September. And then we do, the only water quality that we'll be doing is before and after our pond openings. So we'll have pond openings in the fall and that's when we'll be sampling. But as of right now, we won't get our complete water quality assessment report from the University of Dartmouth until probably, want to say spring of 2022, because it takes a while to process all the data, analyze some trends, and then we get the report, and then I have to go through and analyze it and then mark it up for digestible review. So that's the progress that we're at for right now. So we'll be finishing up our sampling at the end of this month.
Do you hear anything pertaining to water quality testing lab and its creation here on the island? Any new updates?
Unfortunately, I mean, it's something that I think myself as well as others would love to see on the island. I think the concern was when we had a consultant come out and actually do the specific budgeting for the lab and what it would look at. It didn't look like it had much longevity, like it wasn't sustainable for the need that we have on the island, although it would, help some of our citizens as well as our water quality program. But I think that's where it was left, was just for the amount of money that it will cost to put in, we don't have enough services that can keep it going year round as it would be utilized. So, but I think it's still in conversation, but that was the last of the updates that I had heard.
Well, it was promoted by the Nantucket Shellfish Association. I haven't been able to make the last couple of meetings that they've had, and I know it kind of got shifted over. There's money there for the creation of it, as you say, the longevity of it. Over the past 2 decades, water quality testing labs actually condensed, and a lot of them closed down because of what was it called, NELAP requirements. So the federal government required stricter, they needed to upgrade equipment, which is very expensive, and it put a lot of people out of business.
Yeah.
And condensed the laboratories, which is unfortunate. I don't know how far our samples have to go, but I understood back then that a lab needs to have constant flow, no pun intended, in and out with testing, or they simply don't sustain themselves.
Yeah.
Board members, anything under health of the harbor you'd like to discuss? These three
Just one
topics?
thing.
Mr.
Sorry.
Brace?
Several times this summer, and some of you know that I volunteer at the harbor, and I'm sorry, I volunteer at the Sustainable Nantucket's Farmers Market And several times this summer, in sitting at the table where I count people and give information, Steve Bender has come by, and he isn't very kind. He wants to rip me a new one. He wants to tell me over and over again that Shab is doing nothing, that we are these very bad people, that we are the pawns of Libby Gibson. He just holds forth. It's as if he's going to die tomorrow, and he wants to, like George Carlin, wants to get it all out. And this last weekend, this last Saturday, it was particularly bad, and I just had to just sit there and listen to it. And he just sort of ended it and said, oh, I'm just a ravings of an old man. And I just said, anytime, Steve. But one of the things that he said was that if we can, in relation to the FDA thing, if there's actually some movement where we, somehow show that we are working towards stopping boats dumping sewage into the harbor, or catch the guy who is supposedly bleaching his sewage before he releases it into the harbor. If we can prove that we're doing that, then, so he says, they're going to release the hold on the harbor for taking for cohogs, but he doesn't actually say how to do that. And I stopped short of asking him for proof. But the next time he comes by, I don't know if I can contain myself, because I'm tired of him crapping on us. And he's never at any meetings. He goes, you guys do nothing. He's like, you haven't done anything. You're supposed to be an advisory board. How about doing some advising? And I'm just like, God, I know how you felt, Dave. Now I know how you feel. I want to reach out and punch the guy. And I don't care if he's however old he is. He just makes you feel this big.
But
I respect him because he has a lot of knowledge, and he's been around for a long time. And then his own weird way, he cares about the harbor. He's been a select board member. He's been banging away at the issue for years and years. But I'm sorry. I want, the name of the boat. I want the captain's name. I want to see what happened. And then I'll go to the select board and say, hey, we know this is happening. You guys got to do something. But I was I had to take a walk around the block because I just wanted to smack him down. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Just a second, Mr. Franzuto. Peter, you and I had a discussion about this fairly recently after getting the call from Select Board Member Fee. And I was hoping you wouldn't let it be a craw under your skin, because, you're our longest tenured board member, Peter. And since I've been here, I'm on my 7th year now. And when I was first elected to the board, I was approached by Mr. Bender, and his quote was, I've done my time on that board. You're not going to be able to get anything done because you're simply an advisory board.
Yeah.
Let's accept that some negative comments come out. Let them roll off your back and be the bigger man, and don't let it bother you. I mean, we should all be open ears. If anybody has some information to share with us, we know that Mr. Bender's information, I'd love for him to have some substantial evidence, some type of substance other than simply verbal. So, and until he does so, I'm glad to listen to him, but without any substance, we have nothing to act on. We cannot act upon accusation. So, and you know this, Peter,
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't let it get the better of me. I just listened to him. I said, Steve, anytime, but I said, if you could just attend a meeting and tell us what you think and share this information with us. And I'm like, where is he? If this is such a crisis, then where is he? But I guess he's given up on town government. So we're not going to see him at a meeting.
Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, Peter, you're a better man than I, but the thing that he does, that he makes it personal. And when he makes it personal, that's when it gets really, really hard to bite your tongue.
Yeah,
And to both your points, he sat on SHAB for 6 years. And he was a selectman for at least 3.
yeah.
And he got nothing done towards these issues then. So I
Well-
applaud you, Peter. I've been there, and it's a tough one. He's just I write it off as being a crabby old man right now, but
Yeah, well, anyway, whatever. Thank you for everybody for understanding, and I did not.
Peter,
Yeah.
your contribution here couldn't be more stellar. So, I
you.
believe I speak
Thank
for the
you.
board. I'll give a nod, please, for Peter, because without you, we wouldn't run the way we
Exactly.
do. So
exactly.
Appreciate it.
I rely on you heavily, and I think we support one another very well. I'm so proud of this board. Each of you taking certain issues and researching and being able to present. So I'm really proud to be here with all of you, and you all ought to be proud for your contributions and what you're doing. We're volunteering our time, and we don't have a secretary and paid staff. So
I just,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman,
Franzuto.
yeah, I just had a fleeting thought. We ought to be, and I know, Peter, that you do this and you do a great job with a lot of things, keeping us on the straight and narrow and correspondence, et cetera. But I think we really need to do a good job this year in our annual report of the things that we have been working on,
Yeah,
that we have been making recommendations on, and then discussing, and things like the dye tablets and things like the pump outs and things like, the fertilizer and the herbicides and the Airbnb, all the things that we've discussed over the last year and a half. We haven't slowed down at all.
well, you're right, Dave, and we've done a lot. And I was thinking that this summer, like, it's going to be a good town report because we have a lot of things that we've done, letters we've sent. I mean, everything up to I can only go from July 1st of last year to July 30th of this year because it's the fiscal year, but still we did a lot in that time.
We did.
So yeah, I agree with you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Mr. Chairman?
Consider-
Ginger, please.
I would like to add my thanks as well to Peter for his hard work and his, unfailing devotion to the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. I think, without him, we would be, much less effective. And I appreciate everything he's done.
Thanks. You guys are going to make me cry. Okay. Thank you.
We'd be floundering,
Yeah.
pun intended. Okay, new business, Coastal Resilience Advisory Board, which Peter is our representative there. Are there any updates?
Okay, so at the last meeting, there was an awful lot of discussion on the harbor, the movement of sand. There was also the discussion of how the trustees of reservations and the Conservation Foundation were going to protect Code 2. It's funny how this process, this coastal resilience plan, finally brought up everything that I've been saying for I think decades, that Code 2 is, it's a valuable resource to us that's only about 6 feet high, that if it doesn't get protected, the whole harbor is going to be open to, we're going to get much more ferocious damage to the harbor, to the waterfront, to the inner harbor shores. Anyway, so they were saying that one of the proposals in the draft plan, which by the way will be ready in September, is that they armor the outside of Code 2 with sand, and I was saying, and so then I think I kind of stole the show from some of the other members who talked most of the time. But I said it doesn't make sense to put all the sand on the outside because the movement of sand on the outside of Cove 2, basically from Great Point running all the way down to Eel Point, that longshore current, that littoral drift, that's how come we have what we know as the Nantucket Bar. That's how come we have our jetties, because the jetties keeps the sand from, filling in the channel. But if you're going to put it on the outside, it's just going to bag up against the East Jetty and run through the porousness of the East Jetty, right? My comments were, we need to put the sand on the inside.
You're spot on.
And then, there was a consultant that was trying to explain the cuspid spits. And I'm not the coastal geologist, but I did write the book. So I had to sort of step in and say, well, it's the wind in the Northeast in the wintertime and the wind in the summertime from the Southwest that carves out the sand and distributes it out to the ends. And then the tides at the same time wear it down and redistribute it back. And I was talking all representing Shab at the time and saying what we're most concerned about is the sand piling up in the harbor, burying the eelgrass, burying the scallops. Now I'm getting kind of lost here, but so then I said that when the town was getting money for relief money for Superstorm Sandy to rebuild the jetties, the town had SMAS, the School for Marine Science and Technology, do computer modeling to show how much the current would increase in and out of the harbor that would help all of this. And I think, and the amount was, 3/4 of a knot was supposedly what it was going to increase. So this was, I think, news to the consultant Arcadis. And then after the meeting, I got an email from Vince Murphy who wanted to know where I got that report. And I said, well, I think the basis of that is in the estuaries report for Nantucket Harbor. And I sent him that link. And then I said to talk to Jeff Carlson about the 3/4 of a knot thing, because the town did spend money having that computer model run so that they would know how much faster it would flow in and out. And then I mentioned that we as a board wrote letters to the ferries this winter saying, please slow down because you're bagging up sand on the horse shed, and that Sheila made the calls. And so I was kind of like filling them in on everything that our board did and that we know in that regard. So that took up about maybe half the meeting, and then the rest of the part I was probably falling asleep. So but then I also wanted to say that on September 14th there's going to be a stakeholders meeting on Arcadis's proposals for Baxter Road as part of the coastal resilience plan. And I can get you guys the invite information if you want to sit in on that. It's all been sent to me. I can send it to you. You just have to register, and it doesn't cost anything, and then you can be there.
That would be nice to have. Mr. Franzuto. Excuse me 1 second, Dave. Peter, thank you for that. Very interesting stuff. I'm curious to know, because Ginger mentioned this before, and I never really thought too much about this until Ginger mentioned it, that the natural migration of the island moving northward, the erosion on the inside of Cotu versus the outside of Cotu, and how you can actually see over time, there were telephone poles that were in the middle of Cotu, and the couple that are left there's one on the beach in Fourth Bend. And I can remember as a child, these telephone poles, they were cut off, so they were only about 6 foot tall, but they were about in the middle of the landmass of Cotu. And now, what's left of them are on the beach, and it's proof that the island is migrating northward. And hopefully they take that into consideration. Ginger, don't mean to be taking words out of Ginger's mouth, but covering the beach with large deposits of sand also having an effect on certain critters that live there. I'll let Ginger take over. Actually, Mr. Franzuto next, please.
Peter, would you mind if I gave you a call tomorrow? I saw their slide presentation. It was sent to me by some people, and I find it interesting that they want to build a breakwater from Brant Point to down by the creeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was just absolutely completely ridiculous, but I'll give you a call about that tomorrow.
All right. So tomorrow I'm guiding I'm on Smith's Point and then I'm at Stump Swamp. So I probably won't be back until, I should probably be home by 4:30 or 5.
Would Thursday be better?
Thursday, I'm canceling my hikes because it's going to be raining. So Thursday would be much better.
Okay, I'll give you a call Thursday.
Okay.
They build that breakwater, you'll have the most stagnant, stinking inner harbor in creation.
I think Brant Point will be gone by then.
Because of the water circulation there. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'll talk to you about it.
Mr. Chairman,
Other board members on the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee update from Mr. Brace. I'm going to step away for
Mr.
10
Chairman?
seconds. Yes, Ginger.
okay, yeah, I'm not sure I was talking about CO2 with the telephone poles, but if you remember them, then I believe they were there. I think some of those cusps started when the haulover opened. I think it was open for 11 years in the, maybe 1890 to 1900. I don't remember the exact dates, but the flow was in two directions in the harbor. And one of my concerns with the Coastal Resiliency Plan is that they're looking at all the information that we have, but I don't think we have enough, frankly. And I don't believe that sand is coming around Great Point because the shoal off the end of Great Point goes at right angles to the east. And if we were getting sand accreting, it would be going more to the west, I think. Although the lagoon has moved west somewhat from when it was a lagoon, and now it's more of a marsh. I feel like there's not enough study of the currents and the tides, the disconnect between high tide in the sound and the ocean. Shoaling between the end of Eel Point and the end of Smith's Point. I think that I just don't think there's enough new information being collected. I shouldn't really say that because I have not been able to keep up, but my feeling has been more like, we go in, we say what we know, or we theorize based on what we've observed, but I feel like the understanding of the movement of sand around the island needs to be much more comprehensive.
Well, Ginger, I think that's what Mr. Murphy was asking me was, what else can you provide? And I provided him all this, in the very beginning of the process, before we even really had before we were working with a consultant, they were asking all the members of the advisory, all of us, to contribute everything we knew, what all the studies were, and I gave them everything I knew of all the studies that I knew of, all the research that I know of, and basically just went through my bibliography of my book, and so they did get an awful lot of stuff. And then this particular incident, Vincent was asking for what he was asking me for allowed me to give him other things that he didn't know he needed. So I think they do have pretty much everything that has ever been done on it. The the question is, you know, are they able to process enough and come up with the right recommendations? And I agree with Dave, you know, the thing they want to build in front of the, you know, that's not what they want to do. That's a recommendation to us. They hand us the plan. That's the thing that people need to understand. I know that all the people on Facebook, when this thing goes public, they're going to rip it up and spit it out because they think that this is all going to happen. It isn't. It's just, here's the plan. The town paid 500,000 for it, whatever it is, and here it is. So, okay, town, what are you going to do with it? We may not do anything. It's just recommendations. It's not, yes, we're doing this. And it has to be discussed and voted on. It'll be, you know, forever discussions on town meeting and at the select board. And there'll be some things that we'll want to do right away, immediately. And then there'll be some sort of long-term things. It's not, none of it is written in stone at all. It's not like, you know, it's more like the harbor plan. We all said, you know, here are 92 recommendations, and to make the harbor plan work, we need to make all these happen. They happened because we all wanted to make them happen. And we went through the matrix and put all those things in motion. That's what this is. Here are the things that we want to happen to keep the island dry and the history safe. And do we all think that we should do this? And it'll be before lots of people, lots of boards to vote on, and town meeting and letters to the editor and the Facebook page. And it's a long way off anyway.
Well, thank you, Peter.
That's okay. No, sorry. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
Yes, of course. You're welcome, Ginger. Is there anything more you'd like to add?
Well, I guess I was just sort of, I wasn't wanting to say that I didn't appreciate all the work that Peter and everybody else has put into what we already know. I was just kind of wishing that some of that money could have gone to, more current meters and tide gauges and just, mapping of the movement of shoals. I mean, there must be a lot. Did they look at all the LiDAR? There must be a lot of stuff.
They've looked at all of that. They also are tapped into the tide gauges, the tide gauge at the Steamship Authority Pier. The amount of stuff that they've looked at and digested and processed. I mean, they know what they're doing. I mean, God, here I am defending government, but you know, they've done these plans for Boston, for places all around the world. They get stuff. I mean, I guess I can provide for the board, if you like, a list of everything that they have for studies and reports and everything they're working off of, so that we can all see that. If you want that, I can get that. And then
I think that I should look at that. Yes, and not just shoot my mouth off. I should have actual information. You're quite right.
Because then Ginger and everybody else, if there's anything that you guys see, like, oh my God, I can't believe they don't have this, because you know of something, it's not too late. So I will do that.
That's I'm sure there's plenty of information out there that they have recorded. I'm really anticipating just with excitement what the recommendations are. And as Peter said, they're simply recommendations. So but this is could be very dynamic, or we could just sit on our hands. So the choice is the islands as a whole. Thank you for sharing all that with us,
Yep.
Mr. Brace. Any other comments, questions from the board?
I apologize.
Mr. Bossy.
I should have left 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
This is interesting, but I have to run. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's quite all right. Thank you, Mr. Bossy. We're done here, pretty much. Take care.
Okay.
Other board members on the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Board update? Not seeing or hearing any public questions or comment. Now would be the time for anybody left in the public. Give an indication, not seeing or hearing any. Recap our items for next meeting. forgive this meeting for taking almost 2 hours. It's been a long time since we've had a 2-hour meeting, but it had to be done. If there's nothing else to add, I will accept a motion to adjourn from a board member.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second,
This is Ginger.
Thank you, Ginger. The motion's been made by Ms. Andrews, seconded by Mr. Sidlowski to adjourn tonight's meeting. All in favor, Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well. Not leaving anybody out. Mr. Bossy's gone. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Be in touch
Thank
with
you,
you.
Andy.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Andy.
Of course. My pleasure. Mr. Sidlowski, Mr. Brace was gonna send you the updated version of what I read in the beginning. Just in case you have to run a meeting, in case I can't make a meeting, you ought to have that handy.
okay,
Whether you print it out or have it on the side of the screen so you can read the rules for the remote meeting. You ought to have it.